This is Stone Soup, a podcast by the charity Age UK Camden. They have been supporting older people in Camden for over half a century to stay active, connected, independent and empowered in later life. For more information, visit ageukcamden.org.uk.
So, my name is Fran Hazleton. I'm 76 years old. I was born in Camden and have lived in Camden for most of my life. From the front door of the Camden Council flat, where I now live, I can see the block of flats where I lived as a newborn in 1947. That block of flats is Russell Court. Well then, 1947, as now, Russell Court was private flats. However, during the war, the local authority wasn't called Camden then, it was Holman and St Pancras. It took over Russell Court to provide places for people to live who were made homeless because of the Blitz. And that's how my parents got a flat there. That's how they came to be living in Russell Court. The flats in Russell Court are very small. So now with a baby, me, my mum and dad were moved by the council to rooms on the other side of Russell Square in Bedford Way. And that's where my sister was born, in Bedford Way, when I was 18 months old. Her name's Sally. I don't remember the rooms in Bedford Way, but I do remember the next council rooms my family lived in, 24 Boswell Street. This was an 18th century house. In fact, it didn't even have proper electricity. It's not there anymore because it's since we lived there in the 1950s, it's been pulled down, and there are now fairly newly built Camden Council flats there. But anyway, it was a very old house, and it was divided into 4 sets of rooms for different families. On the ground floor there was Mrs. Johnson, and she had her own toilet and possibly even a bathroom, which was quite a luxury in those days. I'm talking about the 1950s now. And on the first floor they were Pakistanis. Now they weren't a family, but they were various single men from Pakistan, and they changed, if you look at the social history, they just came here, they worked for a bit, and then they went back. And then the floor above them was us, the Hazletons, that's my family, and we had 3 rooms, and there was a toilet on the first floor, which we shared. And upstairs from us, there was Mrs. Mitchell, she was called, and she had 4 daughters, and they were all the grown-up daughters, and they all seemed to me to be very pretty. They were just made themselves as glamorous as they could in the 1950s, and they all had names of flowers, and the only 2 I can remember are Rose and Lily, but there were 2 others as well, maybe lavender, I don't know, but definitely they were all called flowers. Now, 24 Boswell Street was opposite a building which contained the Italian hospital. And I often saw these nuns associated with the hospital, and they, again, the 1950s, they had these coifs, I think they're called, nuns don't have them anymore. But God, they were stiff. I think they were made out of plastic. And they were about a yard wide, and you'd see that. That's what I thought nuns would be like forever. But of course they're not. They're much more dressed ordinarily today. And my sister Sally and I, we used to play 2 balls. I don't know if you know this game. We just got 2 balls literally, and it was very and we just used to go wherever we could find a wall. You just do this, and then sometimes you'd let it drop. There were various fancy things you could do with it. Anyway, we found a wall. This wall of the wall of the building, which had the Italian hospital in at one end, and it had the school, St George the Martyr Infant School, in the other end. But on that wall, I don't know if I can tell you this, but it has 2 swear words, very serious swear words, painted very big in white. Anyway, my sister and I, we were introduced to those words at a very early age. But anyway, we just ignored it and we just continued to play our 2 balls with it. Oh, yes, so I told you at the end of Boswell Street was Queen Square. Well, it's still there. And at the end of that street was what everyone used to call a bomb ruin. I thought it was one word. Well, I suppose it was, bomb ruin. And there are lots of those because I'm talking now about I was born in 47, so we're talking about the early 50s. And there are lots of these bomb ruins around. This wasn't the only one. Because what they were buildings that had been bombed during the war. So although I was born after the war was very much still present, you know. So there was this one at the end of Boswell Street, this bomb ruin. And I remember Sally and I, my sister and I, it looked pretty exciting because it was like a modern day adventure playground. So we went in there, we realised we could sort of climb a bit. And then Mrs. Mitchell, the woman who lived in our block, she was walking by and she yelled at us, come out, you know, because obviously it was a very dangerous place. So we did, and she said to us, go to the Foundlings, and that's how she pronounced it. And what she was talking about, and we did go there, of course, eventually, was Corms Fields, which local people just called it the Foundlings. That's the pronunciation. But of course, that really is from the Foundlings, because that's where the Foundling, and that's what this block is named after. But, you know, later on I became a London guide and I found out the history about it. But that's where the Foundling Hospital was. But she called it the Foundlings, and so we called it the Foundlings. And once we discovered it, it's a wonderful place, of course, because it's protected by Act of Parliament. But no adults still today, no adults allowed in there without children. So it is very much, you know, I know there's been various attempts to stop that, but people can't, you know. I know some people try to get just made into an ordinary park, because there's enough parks, you know. It's Corms Fields or the Foundlings, you know, it goes right back to the Foundlings, you know, and it's been kept by law as a place for children. And, of course, we had many years, once we discovered it, many happy years there, especially in the summers, you know, when in the school holidays. My mum, we'd just spend the day there, you know, and it was a very safe, happy place, you know. And, but, of course, once you get to 16, you're not allowed in there without a child. So now I can only although I got very happy memories of it, I can only go into Corms Fields either if I've got a child with me, or occasionally they have public events, you know, which I always go to if I can. And then the other places we used to go to, and this is what my mum liked to do at the weekends. You know, we were poor, so we couldn't be going off to the seaside or anything. But, of course, living here, there were lots of lovely squares we could go to. So what she'd do, we'd just go to Queen Square, which was just at the end of Boswell Street. We just sit, it's a beautiful little square, you know, we just go and sit there. Or sometimes she'd go to Red Lion Square, and that's, you know, very old square, but very nice. Or sometimes we'd go to Lincoln's Inn Fields, and there was a cafe there. And that was a nice treat, just to go to Lincoln's Inn Fields and have a cup of tea, or well, we'd have an orange juice or something, you know. But eventually, you know, I got past 11 plus, which you had to in those days, you know, if you wanted to go. Anyway, and I went to Parliament Hill School for Girls, all still in Camden, you know. So Camden has given me a brilliant education without me paying a penny, you know. I appreciate that, you know. But then I think that's because I was born in a very lucky generation, because we were the post-war babies, and people just wanted to give us things, whether it was orange juice or cod liver oil or free education. We were treated very generously. I was very lucky when I got into council housing. And how did I get that? Because I was married for a while to an Iraqi, and there was a time when, so that would have been my 30s, when we weren't actually living together. And Camden had this is what they did. They used to do. I don't know if they still do it. Every now and again, they have special schemes, and they had a scheme that if you were a couple, but you were in Camden, but you weren't in the same place, that made you eligible for Camden housing, right? And of course, I found out about this scheme somehow, and that applied to me and him. I don't know if we were married then or we were just together, but we were together. But he was actually living in. Anyway, he had an address in Camden. I was living with my parents in Camden, and because of that we were eligible. And so I was then, because I applied, he didn't realise how important it was. But I think we then were offered what was called a hard to let in Clerkenwell, which is still part of Camden. So I was in a flat there. I had the tenancy of a flat there in Clerkenwell. And of course the flat's still there. And I lived there for about 20 years. And then my parents, who were at that stage living in Milman Street, because they had a council flat in Milman Street, where they lived for about 50 years. And then once they got into their 80s, they were offered a flat here. And then when I came here, on the other block, but I used to come here to visit them, and that's when I discovered the Brunswick Centre. And I thought, gosh, it's really nice. So I applied for a flat here, and by then I'd been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, which is what's wrong with me. And I just put that in as one of my points. I had multiple sclerosis. And I got a phone call from the allocations officer. Big surprise. But he said to me, look, you've got multiple sclerosis. You're over 50, which I was by then. And he said, why don't you apply for sheltered? So I did, which was quite a palaver, I had to get assessed and all that, But I did apply. And I was offered a flat here, which I think if I hadn't done it through the sheltered, but if I just applied for an ordinary flat here, which is what I'd done originally, but it might have taken 4 or 5 years. But I was offered this flat within, I was offered a flat downstairs to begin with, and I actually turned it down. But then they immediately offered this one, a floor higher. I just wanted to be a bit higher. I just love it, And what is weird, I think, is that I've lived in Bloomsbury most of my life, Now we grew up. I didn't think, Bloomsbury. I just knew that was the name of it. Now, if people say they live in Bloomsbury, it's very high, very prestigious, But it's just what I've always known. So I did once. I had to go to Royal Free Hospital, up at Hampstead for nothing serious, but I had to go there. And it was a day like this, but not so cold. So I just my buggy, I call it my buggy, I mean that mobility scooter. I'd got my recharger there, so actually in the hospital, I plugged it into a recharger, got it so it was fully charged, and then I buggied all the way from Royal Free to here. And it took me an hour, but it was such a nice ride. I don't go on the roads on that. I go on the pavements, and I don't know if I'd do it again. But I got to Camden Town, and I couldn't. It was so crowded, I couldn't. So I had to. I took a. Well, I know. The only thing is, because I've lived here so long, I kind of know my way around so much. So it was quite easy for me. Although I didn't know exactly. But I thought I'm not going to go through Camden Town because it was packed, really packed with people. And when you're on that buggy, my worry is always that I'm going to, especially if there's kids around, I think I'm going to hit one of them, you know. So I didn't want to go through Camden Town. So I found an, alternative route. But anyway, I got back here. It was a lovely, lovely little ride, you know, but it was very pleasant. I did enjoy that. Just that, really, you know. Live life to the full. Don't be afraid of things. If you're interested in things, go with it, you know. And living in Camden, it's been possible to do that, you know.
The story that I then went on to tell was the story of Stone Soup. And Stone Soup is all about everybody putting in a little. And together we have a feast. That's the heart of it all. About living a good life. That if we all share what we have, the outcome is a feast for us all.
Here comes Kitty Catty.
Hello, what's her name? What's his
Kitty Catty, I
name?
call him, yeah.
Hello. Yeah, gorgeous colour.
He likes you, yeah.